You've probably had a moment recently where something didn't sit right, not because of what you were doing, but because of how someone was reacting to you. Maybe it was a comment that felt unnecessary. Maybe it was a tone that carried a bit too much edge. Or maybe it was realizing that certain people seemed more interested in questioning you than actually supporting you. And at first, you brushed it off. You told yourself it didn't matter. But deep down, you noticed the pattern. The same people who should have been neutral or even encouraging seem quietly invested in seeing you fail. Not openly, not always loud, but consistent enough for you to feel it. And what makes it confusing is that you didn't start out thinking this way. You weren't looking for enemies. You weren't trying to prove anything to anyone. You were simply focused on your path, doing your work, minding your business. But over time, you started to notice how certain narratives were forming around you. Things that weren't accurate, assumptions that didn't reflect who you are. And what hits you the hardest wasn't just the words, it was realizing that some people actually believe those words. That people could form opinions about you without ever really knowing you. That they could be influenced by repetition instead of truth. That kind of experience does something to you. It makes you more aware, more observant. You start paying attention to not just what people say, but why they say it. You begin to see that sometimes it's not about you at all. It's about what you represent, your discipline, your consistency, your potential. These things can make certain people uncomfortable, especially if they feel like they're not where they want to be. And instead of facing that discomfort, it becomes easier for them to shift that focus onto you, to question you, to criticize you, to downplay you, not because you deserve it, but because it makes them feel better about where they are. And once you see that, something changes inside you. You stop taking things personal in that same way. You start realizing that not every opinion deserves your attention, that not every voice deserves a response. You become more selective, not just with your energy, but with your belief system. You stop letting other people define what's possible for you. Because if you're honest, some of the loudest doubts you've heard didn't come from your own mind. They came from people who never really understood your vision in the first place. What's interesting is that while all of this was happening around you, you didn't stop. Even on the day when it felt heavy, when it felt unfair, when it felt like people were misunderstanding you, you kept going. Not perfectly, not without moments of doubt. But you didn't quit. And that matters more than you probably give yourself credit for. Because consistency in the face of doubt, especially when that doubt is coming from outside, is not easy. It takes a level of self-trust that most people are trying to build. And here's the part most people don't talk about. The longer you stay consistent, the harder it becomes for false narrative to hold. At first, people can say anything. They can label you, question you, misrepresent you. But over time, your actions start to speak louder than anything they're said. Your results begin to tell a different story. And slowly, quietly, people start to notice the difference. not because you force them to, but because consistency has a way of revealing what's real. You don't need to announce anything. You don't need to defend yourself to anyone who misunderstood you. You don't need to go back and correct any failed statement that wasn't made about you. Because the truth has a way of becoming obvious when it's lived constantly. When your actions align over time, when your work continues to improve, when your presence remains steady, it becomes harder and harder for people to hold on to a version of you that didn't match reality. And when that shift happens, it's not always loud. It doesn't always come with apologies or big acknowledgments. Sometimes it's subtle. A change is how people speak to you, a different kind of respect, a hesitation where there used to be in criticism, and sometimes it's silence. The same voices that once had so much to say suddenly have nothing to add, not because they've disappeared, but because the narrative no longer works. That's why your focus matters so much right now, not on proving people wrong, but on becoming undeniable. There's a difference. When you focus on proving people wrong, you stay tied to their opinions. But when you focus on becoming undeniable, you shift your energy back to what actually matters: your growth, your work, your standards. And that's where real momentum comes from. You're not in a race with people who doubted you. You're in a process with yourself. And every time you choose discipline over distraction, clarity over confusion, progress over reaction, you move further into a version of yourself that doesn't need validation to keep going. That's where your real strength is. Not in what people say about you, but in how little that determines your direction. And eventually, there comes a moment, not dramatic, not sudden, but clear, where everything starts to make sense. Where you realize that all the noise, all the doubt, all the misunderstanding don't stop you. It didn't define you. It didn't decide your outcome. It was just part of the environment you had to go through. And in a strange way, it sharpened you. It forced you to become more focused, more grounded, more certain of who you are and where you're going. So now, the question isn't whether people were wrong about you. The question is whether you're going to keep moving in the direction that proves you right to yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Not the opinion that were formed without understanding, but the life you're building with intention, the consistency you're choosing every day, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you didn't stop and you're not about to.